To review, the most important things in the plain language course, meaning you can forget almost everything as long as you follow these 3 rules. If you just do these things, your writing will change overnight and you will improve the state of the universe. Please free your verbs, we've already talked about. Use pronouns and use active voice constructions. I know many of you don't know what that is, but in a few moments you will. These are the 3 most important plain language tools. Let's talk a little bit more about pronouns. When we say pronouns, we mean things like we to refer to the agency, you to refer to the reader, or the pronoun I. There's many other pronouns you can use. We, she, he, it, they all work equally well. Why are pronouns important? It's my obligation and responsibility to demonstrate why pronouns are important. We've already shown that pronouns engage the reader, and how else might they help in a more complicated document like this? These are instructions that we use here in the building where I am right now to give people information about how to get their security badge. This particular set of instructions has no pronouns. If you want to see the dramatic effect that pronouns have when on a phrase like this, let's look at the next section. This particular solution has 5 pronouns. If you need a badge, you fill it out. Your manager must do blah blah, submit your form. If you've got questions, call the building. It's a very different tone and a very different set of instructions so that hopefully more people can understand exactly what to do and they can do it more quickly and effectively. That's the hope and beauty of plain language. Now, we have one more slide here that we call the Rebecca McPherson honorary slide. Rebecca McPherson is a skillful attorney who always reminds me that, yes, it's perfectly okay and good to use pronouns as long as we use pronouns correctly. And she is correct. What do we mean by use pronouns correctly? If you're writing material, you can't just say the word I or we. You must define for your reader first. Before you use the word we, you've got to say the Federal Aviation Administration. And if you're working with a long document, you've got to repeatedly throughout that document redefine what your pronouns mean so that your reader never gets confused and is only helped by your use of pronouns. This section talks about active voice constructions. It's probably the single most important part of the plain language course. So please put down your eggplant parmesan. Try to pay attention just for these few slides and you will develop a new important skill that will transform your writing. Why are active and passive constructions so important? I need first to define for you what a passive voice construction is so that you can become familiar and fluent with these things. A passive voice construction here, this is the textbook definition, that the person doing the action follows or comes after the verb, like you see it in this section down here. The fish was swallowed by John, with John coming at the end instead of John swallowed the fish. So passive voice construction is not past tense. There is nothing wrong with past tense sentence like this. This is past tense. John swallowed the fish. But it's a past tense active voice construction. I need to get you so comfortable with this that it makes sense. So, the first definition of a passive voice, the person doing the action follows the verb. Part 2 of that definition is that a form of the verb to be. Now, what's a form of the verb to be? Right here, you see this verb here that says was. A form of the verb to be can be something like is, was, are, were. There's many different versions of to be, but you've got to have that to be verb, and that is always followed by or paired with the word that is called a past participle. Now, no person in their right minds wants to remember the phrase past participle. It's too complicated, so forget about it. The easiest way to grasp this notion of passive voice sentence constructions is to just look for your to-be verb followed by a word that ends in either ed or en. So, passive voice constructions are things like were swallowed or was swallowed or were taken. That's a passive voice construction that ends in en. So there's no need for you to sweat and agonize over past participles. When you go home tonight, get out the newspaper, look for the to-be verb followed by a word that ends in ed or en, and you will have about 90% of your passive voice constructions. Not all of them. Some passive voice constructions are set up a little differently. We'll get to that. I need to teach you the basics first. Now, why? Why do people in the plain language business get all messed up and bothered when they talk about passive voice constructions? I have to show you what the weakness of passive voice is. Here's a sentence that comes from one of our documents, and it reads that way: financial compensation will be provided. Now, if I said, where is the passive voice construction there? You should be able to say, I'm looking for the to-be verb, which is right here, followed by the word that ends in ed, and there it is. That's your passive voice construction. To people who've never taken the plain language course, and to even very effective professional people in the world, they will look at that sentence and they will say, what are you screaming about? It looks okay to me, because passive voice sentences look harmless, they look innocent, and they even look helpful. The person who wrote this really wanted to help. When they wrote that sentence, they wanted to give instructions to the reader, but however, they didn't know what a passive voice construction is, and because they don't know that, they are potentially dangerous. What's so damaging about this sentence? Because it doesn't help the reader understand the two main questions. It doesn't help the reader know, do I get the money, and who gives it to me? Why? Because passive voice constructions like this always leave out who's responsible. Remember, lousy, unclear writing has two primary qualities: the absence of pronouns and the overuse of passive voice constructions. That's what makes unclear writing. That's what we have here. Now, many times, if you just use a pronoun and start your sentence with a pronoun like we or you, it will kill your passive voice construction almost automatically. Not always, but most of the time, because a passive voice construction like be provided can't live happily and survive in the same sentence with a pronoun. So if you start that phrase with the word either we or you, let's start it with we would say something like, we will compensate you, right? There's also a hidden verb in there, compensation. You want to grab that hidden verb, compensate. So a plain language version would be, we will compensate you. That's two pronouns. And once you get practice with this, you can go to the higher order sentence and the higher order solution, which would read this way: we will pay you. Straightforward. Two pronouns, we and you. It answers all the questions. Do I get the money? Who gives it to me? Your task in this course is to be able to identify passive voice constructions, convert them into active voice constructions, and you will see the profound impact it has on your readers and the customer satisfaction that they will experience in your work.